"You don't have kids, Lauren. You don't need that much space." That's what my mother said right before she told me to hand over the house I worked 2 years to earn, to my sister Vanessa and her family of 4. Funny, isn't it? When I was unemployed and homeless, living in a second-hand camper behind grocery stores, nobody offered me a bed. Now that I have a 3-bedroom house, bought with my own sweat and overtime hours, suddenly I'm selfish for not giving it away. All because I didn't marry, didn't pop out a child, didn't become the kind of daughter they wanted. They kicked me out. Then came back with moving boxes for my sister. This time, I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I picked up my phone, hit record, and smiled. Because if they thought I'd just roll over again, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Growing up, I learned one lesson faster than I learned to tie my shoes. I was always second place. Vanessa, my older sister by 2 years, was the golden child. She didn't just get the bigger room, she got the attention, the praise, the leniency, the benefit of the doubt. When she spilled paint on Mom's favorite rug, it was just an accident. When I tripped and dropped a glass, it was reckless carelessness. I didn't hate her. I envied her. She knew how to make herself lovable, soft voice, wide eyes, perfect timing. She cried easily, apologized sweetly, and always seemed to mean well. I was quieter. I kept things inside. And in our house, silence was never interpreted as strength, it was just invisible. My parents treated me like a backup plan. If Vanessa needed something and it wasn't available, they took mine. Clothes, allowance, rides, to school. If it was hers, it was a necessity. If it was mine, it was extra. That included space. When we were kids, Vanessa had the larger bedroom. When she moved out and I finally got to claim it, my mom kept her posters and her decorations intact. "It's still her room," she said, "just in case she wants to come back." That "just in case" lasted 7 years. Once, I asked if I could repaint the walls. My dad looked at me and said, "Why would you want to change what already works?" I think that line stuck with me more than anything else. Why change what already works? Why question a system where one daughter gives and the other takes? It wasn't until college that I had a room that felt truly mine. Even then, I worked 2 jobs to afford it, while Vanessa lived rent-free with her fiancé. She dropped out of college and married young. My parents threw them a beautiful backyard wedding in credit, and I watched from the sidelines, already labeled the independent one, which was really just code for the one we don't invest in. I learned to survive. I got my degree. I didn't make waves. I didn't ask for help. Maybe that's why it hurt so much more when they slammed the door in my face the year I needed them most. Because deep down, I still believed despite everything that family meant something. I didn't realize back then that in our family, need was only valid if it came with a baby stroller and a sob story. And I didn't have either. The pandemic didn't just take my job. It took my apartment, my routine, my savings, and most of my confidence with it. I was working logistics for a mid-sized company in Tacoma. Solid pay, decent benefits. I'd been there almost 4 years. When COVID hit, they downsized the entire department. I got a polite email on a Thursday morning that simply said, "We appreciate your service." That was it. Rent was due in 10 days. My roommate had already moved out. I couldn't cover the cost on my own. Within 2 weeks, I was selling my mattress, desk, and half my wardrobe. I packed what I had left into storage and bought a second-hand truck camper on Facebook Marketplace for $100. It was dusty, the ceiling leaked, and the electrical system was half dead. But it was mine, and it was all I had. I called my parents. Not to ask for money, God, no. Just to ask if I could park in their driveway. "Only if you pay us what the neighbors are getting for their Airbnb garage," my mother replied. She didn't even laugh. "Vanessa and the kids are here," she added. "We don't have the space for your little project." Project. She called my camper Mi Sheltera project. I told her I wasn't asking to move in, just to park. I'd keep to myself. I'd be gone most of the day, looking for jobs. Dad chimed in from the background. People will talk, Lauren. It'll look bad. Like we're enabling you. Enabling me? They once paid for Vanessa's honeymoon. But I was a bad look, in a truck with a leaky roof. I remember hanging up that night, sitting in the back of the camper in a Walmart parking lot, watching fog collect on the windows. The silence was so loud, it rang in my ears. I cried for the first time in months, not because I was weak, but because I'd finally accepted the truth. I could become homeless in front of my own family's house, and they'd still close the blinds. And the worst part? Vanessa knew. She walked by my camper the one time I tried parking a block away, smirked, said something like, "Well, I guess this is what happens when you don't plan for the future," then walked off with a Starbucks cup in one hand and her toddler in the other. I had never hated anyone until that moment. Not truly. But I learned how fast love can rot when respect is gone. That was rock bottom. But in hindsight, it was also the last time I would ever ask them for anything again. I learned how to live with less because I had no other choice. I parked the camper in the back corners of store lots, industrial areas, anywhere I wouldn't get a knock on the window at 3 a.m., but the knocks came anyway. Security guards, strangers, sometimes worse. I kept pepper spray in one hand when I slept. My phone stayed under my pillow, set to record with one tap. There were nights I shivered in my coat because the insulation was trash. Summers, I baked. No AC. Just a tiny battery fan that died every few hours. The mini fridge barely held, and I had to rotate bags of ice just to keep food cold. Showering was whatever I could find: my old gym, a gas station with decent water pressure, or a friend who still returned my texts. And yet, I endured. I started freelancing. Entry-level logistics work online, then part-time, then a warehouse shift at a food distribution center. I told them I'd take any hours. Nights, weekends, holidays. I didn't care. The manager saw my grit and let me crash the back lot when needed. That's how I met Yvonne, the security guard. He was ex-military, quiet, and always brought an extra thermos of coffee. We'd sit on milk crates at 2 a.m. while he told me stories about places I'd never been, and I told him nothing about mine. He never pitied me, and I think that's why I trusted him. I saved everything. No new shoes, no dinners out, no Netflix, just canned food, gas, and savings. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every time I felt like giving up, I'd look at the ceiling of that camper and whisper, "Just one more month." That month became 2, then 6, then 24. And finally, after a Christmas spent drinking cheap cocoa in the dark and a promotion to floor supervisor at the warehouse, I found a listing. A 3-bedroom manufactured home on a small lot, just 2 miles from work. It wasn't fancy, but it had real floors, a front door, and walls that didn't shake in the wind. The asking price was low. I bargained it down even further, drained my savings for the down payment, prayed the loan would go through. It did. And 2 weeks later, I stood on the porch with the keys in my hand, sobbing. This wasn't just a house. It was the first time in my life that I had something my family couldn't take. No shared bedroom. No, just in case Vanessa needs it, clause. No more asking. I didn't even tell them. I posted one photo, just one, on my profile with the caption, 2 years, 1 camper, and this. That was it. But apparently, it was enough to set everything in motion. The first night in my new house, I slept on the floor with nothing but a sleeping bag and a pillow from the camper. No furniture yet, no curtains. Just soft silence, the kind that feels like a hug after 2 years of noise and neon parking lot lights. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is mine. I didn't have to listen for footsteps outside my door. I didn't have to hide my charger from strangers. I didn't have to ask permission to exist. I had utilities under my name, mail in my own mailbox, a key that fit the lock and a lock no one else had a copy of. I bought a second-hand couch from Facebook Marketplace, painted the walls a soft sage green. Hung up thrifted art that didn't match, but made me smile. Every step was intentional. Every nail in the wall said, I am not temporary anymore. The camper, now parked in the backyard, sat like a museum piece. It still smelled like insulation and hope. I cleaned it, fixed the water pump, and left it there not because I needed it, but because I wanted a reminder, a symbol. I promised myself, no matter what happened, I would never let anyone take my roof again. Work was going well. I was respected. I had colleagues who saw me as competent, not desperate. Ivan still dropped by some evenings to share coffee and stories, but this time we sat on real chairs. Life felt possible. So when I shared that photo one shot of my porch with a caption that said nothing and everything, I didn't expect fireworks, just closure. A digital sigh of relief. I forgot one thing though. Vanessa follows me. And my mother watches everything. They hadn't messaged me in months. Not for my birthday. Not when I started the new job. Not when I posted about the camper life. But the moment they saw, I had a homeen, actual, physical house, with more than one bedroom, they found their way back. And not with flowers. Not with apologies. Not with congratulations. They came with something else entirely, a plan. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was repotting a peace lily on the porch, finally settling into the rhythm of a quiet life, when I heard a car door slam. Then another. Then children screaming. I stood up just in time to see my mother, Vanessa, her husband Matt, and their two kids stepping out of a silver minivan I didn't recognize. I hadn't given them my address. No call, no message. Just, there they were. Surprise? My mom called out, as if this were some kind of holiday visit and not a home invasion. The kids ran up my walkway like it was a playground. Vanessa smiled like she was posing for a magazine cover. We were in the neighborhood, she said. The nearest relative lived 2 hours away. Before I could respond, they were inside. Shoes off, bags down, kids sprawled on the living room floor watching cartoons on my modest TV. Matt opened my fridge without asking. I stood there, frozen, holding a ceramic pot still half full of soil. They gave themselves the tour. Mom ran her hand across my countertops like she was checking a hotel suite. Vanessa peered into the spare bedroom and said, "This would be perfect for Lily and Jax." The kids' names. I didn't respond. After about 10 minutes, my mother turned to me and said cheerfully, "You really did well for yourself, honey. But don't you think it's a bit much? For one person?" There it was. The opening line of the script they'd rehearsed. Vanessa followed right on cue. "Matt and I are trying so hard to find a place. Everything's just too expensive with 2 kids. And now with him commuting almost an hour to work, it's wearing him down." I blinked. Slowly. "So you came here? For what?" "To talk," Vanessa said. "About possibilities." They asked to chat privately in the kitchen. Matt and the kids were comfortable enough in the living room. My mother stood guard by the hallway like a backup singer waiting for her solo. Vanessa leaned in, lowered her voice, and said something I'll never forget. "You have the camper. You know how to live small. We need this more than you do." As if my stability was an accident. As if I didn't crawl through hell to get here. As if this house was some community resource to be handed off to the more deserving. "And of course," she added, "you'd still be welcome to use the kitchen if needed. We could set some curfews to keep the kids on a schedule." My hands clenched so hard around the edge of the counter, I felt the wood shift beneath my palm. I didn't yell. Not yet. But my smile disappeared. And I said 4 words that made Vanessa pause for the first time that day. "Get out of my house." I thought that was the end of it. After I told them to get out, Vanessa scoffed, but they all shuffled out slowly. My mother muttered something about me being ungrateful. Matt grabbed the kids, and they drove off, no apology, no acknowledgement of how wrong it all was. I didn't sleep that night. I installed chain latches on both doors, ordered a cheap security camera I couldn't really afford, and texted Ivan. If you see a silver Dodge van near my place, let me know. 3 days passed. Then came Friday evening. I had just returned from work tired, sweaty, hungry, and there, in my driveway, was a moving truck. And Vanessa's minivan. I stood frozen, heart racing, hands shaking. Boxes were stacked on my porch, toys on my lawn. Vanessa's kids were eating chips on my front steps like they lived there. Matt was dragging a dresser up the walkway with a smug, sheepish smile. And my sister? She was standing at the threshold of my open front door, my door, with one hand on her hip and the other holding a set of keys I'd never given her. I marched up the driveway. "What the hell are you doing?" Vanessa turned and smiled. "Mom gave us her spare key from when you were in college, and we figured, since you wouldn't help voluntarily, we'd just get settled. It's just temporary." Temporary. That word echoed in my ears like an alarm. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I walked back to my truck, locked the doors, and called 911. That's when Vanessa lost her composure. She ran to my window, pounding on the glass. "You can't do this. We have children. Don't you care?" Her voice cracked into a full-blown tantrum. The kids started crying. Matt stood there helpless. She shouted, "If you don't stop, I'll key your truck." The operator heard everything. I repeated, "They've broken in, they've changed my locks. They're claiming rights to my home." 15 minutes later, the cops arrived. By then, Vanessa and Matt had barricaded themselves inside my house. Yes, inside. They had changed my locks. My original doorknob lay discarded on the porch, drilled open. The new lock was shiny, smug, and unfamiliar. They even left the drill and the packaging for the new hardware on the front lawn. I showed the officers my ID, the deed, and the unopened mail still addressed to me. They knocked. No answer. Then the cops called the locksmith company, printed on the receipt from the box Vanessa left, just lying there like a breadcrumb trail of stupidity. Eventually, she opened the door. Vanessa and Matt stepped out with a printed rental agreement, cheap paper, unsigned by me, but with a scribbled fake signature at the bottom. "This proves we had an arrangement," Vanessa said with tears in her eyes. The cop turned to me. "Is this your signature?" I laughed hard. "No, and I have a signature log from my HR department that says otherwise." I turned to Vanessa. "That's fraud. You know that, right?" She blinked, her mascara smudged. "But you don't even need the house. You're alone." My voice was steady. "Yes, alone, and in peace." My mom pulled up 10 minutes later. Of course she did, arms folded, face stiff. "You could have just done this for your sister. She has a family." "She also has a court date if I press charges," I replied. My phone? It was already recording. I had Vanessa on camera screaming, threatening my property, presenting forged documents, and illegally changing the locks. The cops turned to her. "Ma'am, you need to vacate immediately or we will proceed with arrest. You have 5 minutes to gather your things." Vanessa broke, tears, pleading, blaming me. "You're punishing my kids." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself, something you've never done for me." Matt tried to act like the victim. My mom started wailing dramatically, telling the officers I was ruining the family. One officer actually muttered under his breath, "Lady, the family was ruined way before we got here." They packed everything back into the moving truck, slowly, bitterly. Vanessa shredded the fake lease in the front yard like a toddler throwing confetti. Her daughter asked, "Mommy, why can't we stay here?" She snapped, "Because Aunt Lauren is selfish." I bent down, looked the child in the eye, and said gently, "No, sweetheart." Aunt Lauren just finally said no. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shake or scream or collapse into a mess of trauma. I sat on my couch, legs tucked under me, with a warm bowl of mac and cheese and my laptop. And I wrote. I detailed everything from the night they kicked me out with a camper and excuses, to the day they tried to move in behind my back with forged papers and entitled tears. No exaggeration. No drama. Just the truth. I posted it on my social media with one line. Sometimes, The only way to save yourself is to tell the story no one else will. By morning, it had gone viral. Within 2 days, cousins I hadn't heard from in years were messaging me. My aunt in Oregon left a voicemail that simply said, "I always suspected your mom played favorites. I just never knew how bad it got." The extended family group Chatant's a dead zone lit up like wildfire. Screenshots were flying. Apparently, Vanessa had already posted her version of events. A carefully curated sob story about being cast out by her bitter, childless sister, and how family means sacrifice. Except, she forgot the internet never forgets. My post had photos of the forged lease, the video of her yelling on my porch, and screenshots of texts from neighbors who had seen her kids jumping on my furniture before I even got home. People were furious. Not just for me, but because the lie was so obvious, so manipulative, and so practiced. It made them wonder how many others had been quietly erased by their own families. My grandfather, me mom's dad, called me for the first time in over a decade. He said he was proud of me, that he never liked how my mother and Vanessa treated me, that he and my grandmother were ashamed. That alone felt like justice. But it didn't stop there. By the end of the week, I got an invitation, a request to host Christmas Eve at my house that year. From the cousins, from the aunts and uncles. Without my mother, without Vanessa, without Matt. And for once, no one whispered, "Poor Vanessa," in the background. She tried. Oh, she tried. Passive-aggressive posts, cryptic stories, even a family chain email about how some people just hold grudges too tightly. But no one replied. They'd seen the truth. And once seen, it could not be unseen. Matt deleted his social media altogether. My mom tried calling twice, I didn't pick up. Instead, I framed a photo of my camper and placed it in my entryway with one quote below, "What they used to shame you will become your foundation." Christmas Eve came. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. There were no judgmental glances, no backhanded compliments, no pressure to serve someone else's narrative. Just laughter, mismatched chairs, too many cookies, and Ray Charles playing from a Bluetooth speaker while my cousins helped decorate a 10-second-hand tree. We used the camper as a guest room. My 9-year-old cousin begged to sleep in it because it looks like a secret spaceship. I smiled and said, "It used to be." That night, I stood in the doorway watching people I chose to love, laughing and warm in the home I had built, and I finally understood. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who doesn't make you bleed. My mother didn't show up, Vanessa didn't crash the party, no one dared. I heard from a cousin later that Vanessa tried to guilt-trip my parents into giving her their house next, so she wouldn't have to live cramped anymore. My dad said no. Even he was tired. Poetic, in a way. Let them try the camper life if they want more space. It built me. Let's see what it does to them. I still walk past that camper some mornings and tap the side like an old friend. I don't need it anymore, but I keep it close. Not out of fear. Out of gratitude. Because it reminded me of who I am when no one is looking, when no one is helping, when it's just me, 4 tires, and a roof held together by willpower and zip ties. I used to think that silence meant defeat. Now I know. Silence can be peace. And sometimes, peace is the loudest, most powerful thing in the world.